Yeah, I think we can hop into Anora right now real
Yeah,
quick.
I think we should. I would love to do that.
I'm guessing you have some thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Can you just give some context for people who don't necessarily know what we would be talking about in regards to Anora and an intimacy coordinator?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Anora was just won Best Picture for 2024. Yes?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes. I always, the Oscars being
confusing.
2025, and then I always mix that up. But it's Sean Baker's most recent movie, and he wrote, directed, produced, and edited it, which is kind of crazy. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sean Baker's work, but he is always making movies about sex workers.
Yeah.
So like all of those other films, Anora was about a sex worker, played by Mikey Madison, who is a very talented 25-year-old. And I have so much respect for her. Anything I say is not a dig at her, because she is seriously like such a determined and amazing actress. However, I did think it's a little strange that Sean Baker didn't provide an intimacy coordinator for the film, just because the film has so many, first of all, sex scenes in it, but a lot of nudity and a lot of kind of like, if it's not sex, it's more like simulated, exotic dancing. I'm assuming you both saw it.
I've seen it.
I actually have not seen it. No.
Yeah,
maybe watch it.
Yeah, I
have.
Okay, but what did you think? Can I ask just what you thought of it?
Just of the movie as a whole, or
Yeah,
like
sure.
as the sex
Honestly, like as a whole, yeah.
I think because like the kind of the first like third of the movie is just kind of like softcore porn.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I thought that dragged on for a little too long for my taste.
Okay.
I kind of got the vibe of like what he like the world and the world that the character of Annie or Anora inhabits. Like I got that within the first like 10 minutes. I don't necessarily think it had to go on for as long as it did.
Sure.
The actual story of it, I liked it. Like I said, the first part dragged on a little bit too long for me, but I liked it as far as the writing and direction of it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you not like it?
It's a film that I kind of agree with certain things you said, and it's not that I didn't necessarily like the story. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, because I think you should watch any nominated movie for Best Picture and Best Picture winner, whether or not they're
Good.
the best picture.
Yeah.
But they're nominated and they won for a reason. However, it's one of those movies where the more I watch it, the more I actually don't really like it. And I know a lot of people who love it, so I'm not really going to go into like detail, because everyone obviously has their own opinion and experience of the film.
Yeah.
But I would say, specifically in terms of having an intimacy coordinator versus not having one, that was a film where I was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. Like, you should have one, even though there's a Variety interview where Mikey Madison is saying like, well, I just felt really comfortable with my, like, I forget his name, but the actor who played her love interest. And, Sean made it a very comfortable situation, and I didn't feel the need to have anyone else there. And while I totally like understand and support what the actors feel and what they like or want, which is like, that's like the main part of my job, so I'm always going to listen to them. It's also very apparent that Sean kept asking if they felt like they needed one, which is not something that directors should be doing. Like, an intimacy coordinator should be provided, especially if your actors are naked, especially if they're, in simulated sex scenes. And that's what we're taught in training. So in my brain, I, like, red flags went off when I heard that.
Yeah.
But also the actors they haven't come out and said like, I was really uncomfortable and this was a bad experience. So there's something to be said about that as well, I think.
Yeah.
And also, for what it's worth, I'm not saying I loved the movie. It was a fine movie. I don't think it deserved Best Picture personally, out of any of the 10 up there.
Okay, sure.
But like I didn't hate it for what it's worth.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of like what you just mentioned with like regards to intimacy coordinator, like Jake and I were talking about it, and we actually thought that something that really interesting point. I don't know if there were any specific angles like of what I'm gonna reference in this, but like a camera operator who's like right there as like a simulated sex scene, possibly nudity is happening.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if like they'll be comfortable enough to speak up.
Right.
Like, hey, can we get a different angle? I'm not necessarily comfortable with this, especially as they're seen kind of as like a below the line technical role.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point to bring up, because there are so many, especially camera operators specifically, because they're on the front lines. Like, they're going to be seeing everything that the director wants to be seen, and if there's simulated sex, well, they're going to be right up in there catching all of that. And that's a very good point to bring up, because part of my job would be to also make sure that that person is like being heard, feeling okay, doing what they're doing, And if they were to be like, hey, I don't really know how I feel about this, they could have someone on set who won't jeopardize maybe their position or, the integrity of what they're doing with the film. And that would be where an intimacy coordinator could come in, not just for the actors, but like you said, for the DP. Yeah.